Five, four, three, two, one. Hack. Welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We have team members joining us from all across the globe, team members in Europe, team members in Australia, team members in Asia, team members from the tech industry, from sales groups, from marketing teams, all for one reason, to talk about how do we create, establish, and sustain elite team performance. We're going to spend the next 25 to 30 minutes talking about that, and then we'll open it up for question and answer at the end to have an open discussion on how you can do that with your teams. As a reminder, my name is Joel Neeb. My call sign is Thor. That's my nickname. Most people in my world know me as Thor. You can follow me on Twitter and especially connect with me on LinkedIn to follow up on some of our conversations. This is my background. I'm the president of Afterburner, but more importantly, before working at Afterburner, I spent the first 17 years of my professional career as a fighter pilot and trainer pilot. I flew F-15s and T-38s. And for this crowd, what really is relevant is that I operated in a complex, dynamic, high-stakes environment. So an environment that was constantly changing. I was flying 1 or 2 times the speed of sound. I had young wingmen trying to keep them alive and make good decisions. We got 350 instruments in the cockpit, and we're trying to distill all of this complexity into the few things we should focus on at any given point in time to be effective. We take those same techniques and help you to do the same thing in your world, to take the complexity that you operate in the business world where markets are moving faster than ever before, where the product cycle's gone from 7 years for a product that you're able to enjoy the profits from down to 2 or 3 years now because the market can catch up so quickly. We want to help you to stay ahead of the rate of change and to make smart decisions to affect your teams. And so today we're going to focus our discussion on building the elite team. How do we create the elite team? How do we sustain performance on the elite team? As we talk about that, I want you to think about the times in the past when you've been on an elite team. Think about those times when the group you were with was building something larger than any one individual on a team. I want you to think about those times when you operated as one group, when you were aligned in your mindset, you were focused on one objective, and then when the inevitable pop-up threats came up, you were able to adapt and react as one team, and it felt really like one organism operating in that role. We all have experiences where we've been on elite teams in the past. And then contrast that with some of the teams you've been on where maybe you had some great components for success, maybe you had some great individuals on that team, but for whatever reason it didn't quite gel, it never got to the point of elite team status, and it didn't quite cross that line into building something bigger than the individuals on the team. We're going to talk about what we see as the defining factors for the elite teams that we've had the opportunity to both work for and with in the corporate world. We're going to talk about who should be on your elite team, how to build the optimal team size, the key roles, team and mission, and the imperative for your group. So who should be on your elite team? This is a critical question. First thing we always tell team members is, as leaders, I want you to think of the key stakeholders. Who are those folks that are going to go out there and execute your mission? If it's a project, who are the people that are going to play a critical role in executing the project? You need to get their buy-in, their commitment, their alignment, so you need to put them on the team early. I want you to resist the temptation to bring on team members midway through the mission. Because remember, at that point, you've already built a lot of the alignment that's going to take place, and you're going to have to get them back into the flow of an existing team, and that's always tough to do. I also want you to resist bringing on too many team members, so we'll talk about next the number of folks that you should have on your team, but at this stage, just think about those key stakeholders that are going to help you go execute your mission. I want you to get creative when you do this. So it's all too easy to bring in the team members that sit around us in the cubicles or maybe are in the same functional group. I want you to think outside of your functional unit. Can we bring on somebody from compliance? If we're launching a product, compliance typically plays a role about halfway through our mission. A lot of times they're not brought into the discussion early enough. What if we brought them into the planning stage and they were a part of the mission the entire time? Maybe it's legal. A lot of times legal hurdles get in our way and stop us from getting our contracts over the goal line. I'm working with a corporate team right now, and if I said the name, you'd recognize a big, huge tech company, and they're having some challenges, not because they're not innovative, not because they don't have a great R&D department that's putting products out, but because the legal hurdles are so significant and so daunting that they're unable to get their products to market as quickly as possible. And what that means is they're actually lagging behind the rest of the industry and the competitors, and it's not because they're making creative mistakes, it's because they have one bottleneck in legal that's slowing everything down. So bring them into your system, bring them into your conversation as early as possible, and put them on your team. If those team members or if those folks can't make it to be a part of your full team, I want you to consider putting them on your red team. And as a reminder, the red team are those individuals that you bring in after you created the draft plan. So remember, we get our draft plan created, and we know that it's not perfect because there's no such thing as a perfect plan, and we want to get it vetted. And the people we vet it through are the red team members. These are the subject matter experts anywhere across the globe, the people that were most excited to get their inputs on our plan. And we do this remotely dispersed all the time. We'll get red team members in Ireland and somebody in Singapore, and we'll get their inputs on the plan, and it really tightens it up and makes it better. So if you just for whatever reason can't get legal to be a part of your full mission, at least bring those types of folks in here at this point so that they can vet your mission as part of the red team. And then last, I want you to strive for diversity on your teams. There are a lot of studies coming out right now that show how diversity adds to teams, and it adds to team success rates by making sure that we have a diverse group of people. And here's what I mean by diversity. It may not be the typical traditional sense of it as we define it. Diversity is different viewpoints, diversity in thought. And I saw this firsthand when I was flying fighter planes and trainer aircraft, because we flew with 25 allied countries. So in some missions, I'd fly with someone from South Korea. Another mission, maybe later in the afternoon, I'd fly with somebody from Africa. And it was extremely valuable for us because we saw different problem-solving techniques, different approaches to the same business we've been doing for a long time, flying airplanes, and they brought these great insights that we had never considered before. And it was because of the diversity that they brought to the table, the diversity of thought that they brought as a team. We've got a lot more to talk about that, how to help build out your diverse team in the future. One of the other concepts is that diversity is also making sure you have a common mental model, because diversity can also be a barrier. If we have different cultural backgrounds and different questions as to, which cultural background are we going to adhere to for our project execution, then that becomes a challenge in and of itself. So you need a common mental model and a structure to operate as one unique team with the diversity intact. And so you can go check out afterburner.com/team-diversity for some more information on that after the webinar. All right, next up, team size. What is the optimal team size? If you've listened to these before, I really anchor on this one because I think it's an important concept. So I think we have a poor understanding of what the optimal team size is in the corporate world. Because a lot of folks would say, hey, the more the merrier, right? Let's put on additional team members. That's just it's better for us to operate as a team. But behavioral scientists have shown again and again that the optimal team is between 5 to 9 team members. If you have less than 5 members, then a lot of times that means that you're capacity constrained and you find yourself saying, hey, I wish there was just one more person here to help with the workload. I wish there was one more person to give us insights during the planning stage. And here's the thing, if there are more than 9 people, now another strange anomaly takes place. The extroverts are going to start dominating the introverts, and we lose those great inputs from the introverts unless we're specifically facilitating the conversation to get those inputs from the introverts. And the other thing that happens is we are no longer having a constructive dialogue once we go beyond 9 people. Now it becomes a matter of us really advocating for our positions and instead of having that good constructive discussion on what we can do better as a team. Because I know if there's 13 people in the room that, hey, I'm only going to get 30 seconds of airtime, so I better make it count. When it's my turn to talk, I'm going to advocate for my position and kind of plant my flag and talk about the way I think it needs to be done instead of having a great dialogue like we did when the team size was smaller. We see this executed in practice again and again at the sessions that we run at Afterburner, because if you've been a part of our mission planning exercises that we do with your teams, we've done this thousands of times, and it's a team building exercise where we deliberately create larger than the optimal team, right? As some of you, I'm sure, are smiling and nodding right now as you're thinking about this experience. Greater than 9 people. In fact, we bring 15 to 18 people on a team. And I've seen different teams in the competitive stance say to one another, hey, we're going to do better because we've got 18, you only have 16. But we know the secret that these teams that are larger have a much harder time communicating. And by the end of this 1 hour session, this 1 hour challenge, we always see the same thing. Everybody's on their feet. Everybody's trying to talk over one another. They're trying to advocate for their position. There's 2 or 3 people that are just totally disengaged out of that 18-person group, and they got their arms crossed and they pulled out their iPhones, and it's called social loafing when you're doing this with your team in the corporate world. But basically, they've disengaged because you can't have a constructive conversation with that many people. So bottom line, 5 to 9 people is the best one. Jeff Bezos has a great quote where he talks about any more people than can share 2 pizzas, and we've got too large of a team. So he has the 2 pizza rule at Amazon, and it's what we flew with as well. When I would go employ in F-15s, we would have no more than 8 people ever in a formation. Now, of course, we'd very often go out strategically with 70 to 80 aircraft, but the only people on a radio frequency that could hear one another, the only ones that would react in relationship to one another were team sizes of 8. And we had one more frequency where we could talk to everybody within the 70 to 80 aircraft package, but we rarely used that, and that was really just for coordinating high-level activity, and for the most part, there was silence on that particular radio frequency. All right, so here's some key team roles. So as you built out your team, you figured out who's on it, you made the optimal team size. Now I want you to start populating the key team roles for your group. The first one is what we call the ACE. The ACE is the tactical leader for execution. The ACE is doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work to make sure that the mission gets across the goal line. If you've done missions with us in the past and you were not the ACE, you probably marveled at how seamlessly this mission seemed to go and how quickly we were able to meet. We only had 15-minute sessions with the entire team each week, and we send you right back out and get you working on the mission, and very little meeting time was used up as a group. And we certainly didn't open up planning again or open up a real strong collaborative mindset, because we needed to make sure you guys were able to get out there and execute. The reason behind that, and the reason we were able to only have 15-minute sessions, is because we had an ACE that was working behind the scenes. And the ACE is coordinating with all the different course of action owners and making sure that the courses of action are taking place, understanding what the new pop-up threats are going to be, because inevitably there's pop-up threats. ACE is communicating with the champion, who you're going to hear about in a second, to make sure we've got the right resources to get the mission across the goal line. So the ACE is really working behind the scenes to make sure the mission is successful. Here's what I want you to consider when you're identifying your ACE. It has to be a subject matter expert, someone who gets it. It has to be somebody who wants this position, who actually cares about it and is going to help make this mission successful. And then finally has the capacity to get it done, meaning they have enough time, they don't have too much pile on their plate. Really, you can only lead one mission at a time, so if they're a part of multiple missions or already leading a mission, it's probably not a good candidate to be your ACE. Next up is the champion, and the champion is the strategic leader for this mission. And some folks call it a sponsor. There's different words for it, but basically what it means is that this is the person who ensures that we're focusing on the right missions, right? Because all too often we have tactical execution taking place, but it's not connected strategically to the overarching annual objectives for the company. And this is where we have teams that are busy, but they're not necessarily working on the right things for the organization. The champion is the one who makes sure that we are working on the right things. The champion is going to be somebody at a little bit higher level. They're going to be able to see 5 to 7 missions at any given point in time, and they're going to look at these missions and they're going to determine which ones are struggling, need a little bit more resources, which ones need to be de-emphasized, which ones maybe even need to be turned off because we're no longer pursuing that type of mission. This is just as an important thing to say as getting the mission across the goal line, because the toughest thing to do is task shedding, right, where we tell teams what to stop doing. And this is a unique opportunity that the champion has to say, instead of doing these 7 missions, we're only going to do 6. Here's what's coming off the table, so that we can be more focused on the critical few and stop trying to boil the ocean. So the champion's got an important role. Think about somebody who has the position and the understanding and the strategic perspective to be able to oversee multiple missions at one time, and the authority to make sure that some missions are enforced and emphasized over others. And then the last one, this is one that gets overseen a lot, and they're overlooked a lot, rather, and it doesn't get picked up by a lot of teams, but the scribe, or an alternate ACE, is a critical role. And the scribe's responsibility is just as it sounds. This person is going to capture notes and capture the data while the ACE is leading the XGAP sessions each week. But more importantly, this is also going to be your alternate ACE, so that when the ace goes on vacation or is pulled away for another project for a week, then this mission doesn't go off the rails, and we have someone else who has strong situational awareness around the mission and can step up and be the alternate ace and carry the torch for that week while the regular ace is gone. I've seen this play out with a particular tech company where they had a great ace leading a critical objective for this company and doing a fantastic job. He was doing such a good job that he was given an offer he couldn't refuse to go become the COO of another large tech company, and he took that role, and immediately they didn't have an ace. They hadn't picked an alternate ace. They hadn't really kept anybody in the loop up until that point because this ace had been doing such a great job, and they thought they'd never have to worry about that. Well, sure enough, this became an issue, and they had to scramble to keep the mission on track and keep the team together. Next up is the imperative. This is the sense of why for this team. So why does your team exist? If you can't answer that question, maybe your team does not need to exist. And once again, that's just as important to figure out what teams shouldn't exist. Why should we not put a remotely dispersed global team together and force them to work together if they don't have a common purpose as a group? I'm working with a team I have in mind next week. I'm really excited about it in Singapore, and they've got great team members from all across the globe, from Europe, from Asia, from all over the place, and one of their challenges is, what is our charter as a team? What is the goal that we are collectively pursuing, and why does it make sense for all of us to work together as one unit to make that happen? And they're going to help define that next week. Once that's defined, then you can help make that transition between being a team of champions versus a championship team. This is a great analogy that I saw in action when we were helping out Nike a few years ago, and they had the Nike Jordan CEO up there talking about his team, and his team is fantastic. Individually, it's all former NBA players. They're all type A personalities, hard charging, they get stuff done. A lot of them went to Harvard Business School, a couple Stanford graduates in there. And so, you know, independently and on resumes, they are obviously champions. But he was having a challenge gelling them together as a team and creating that championship team. We put two pictures up. Put a picture of the 2012 Miami Heat up. If you remember that team, it's definitely a team of champions, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and many others. And then he put up the San Antonio Spurs. And the CEO looks at the first picture and says, this is a team of champions. This is people who obviously are some of the best players in basketball history. Independently and individually, they are some of the most capable people on the planet in terms of basketball. He said, but look over here. These aren't big-name players at the San Antonio Spurs. These aren't the folks that have the shoe contracts or you're hearing about on TV all the time. But this is a team of champions, and they just got done beating this group over here that was an individual team, and we have a championship team in the San Antonio Spurs that defeated the team of champions in the Miami Heat. And it really resonated with the group, and it made me remember that the elite teams I've been on in the past weren't necessarily characterized by one or two incredible individuals. It was a sense of belonging and trust that we had, and a sense of why to go pursue something as a group. So as you think about your imperative, I want you to pare this down to just a simple statement on why you exist as a team. So for Nike, when we work with them, one of the things they focus on, and they talk about it all the time, is that we want to bring out the athlete in everyone. We want to make sure that everything we do is about inspiring the athlete in every person. And it's not for superstars, it's not for the Michael Jordans exclusively out there, it's for every athlete on the planet. Disney wants to delight the world, right? When we work with their Imagineers, everything they do is to make people happy. And whether that's from their cartoons to their parks to their characters, everything they do should delight the people that it's around. And then at Afterburner, ours is to accelerate performance for individuals, teams, and organizations. And so if you're working with us on an individual basis, whether it's a fitness mission or you're getting professional development or leadership training through our team, we can do that. We do teamwork with small groups, and then of course we work in entire organizations and help you create the strategic objectives and connect that to execution along the way. But here's the significance. This helps all of these teams to unite behind a common imperative, a common Simon Sinek why as a group, and that allows us to be more effective. That allows us to see that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and we become that championship team instead of the team of champions. Last up, this is a really important one. This is providing team and mission, a sense of team, a sense of belonging, a sense of trust, and a sense of purpose to your organization. At Afterburner, we say all the time that inspired alignment plus disciplined execution equals success. Inspired alignment means you have collaborative buy-in. Everybody on the team believes in what we're building. They have a common vision for success. They've got a common mental model for how we're going to go execute. Once we have that alignment, once we have that sense of vision, we need to turn that into activity, right? And so that activity comes in the discipline execution side. Now we need to take this team and remove all the obstacles for execution. We need to streamline the path from where we are today to the destination that we all agree on. So it's those two elements that we're constantly trying to provide a team. One of my favorite quotes is that vision without action is daydreaming, meaning inspired alignment without disciplined execution is just daydreaming, but action without vision is a nightmare. So if we're just go out there and acting busy and doing the disciplined execution without connecting it back to inspired alignment, that's a nightmare as well. You can't have one without the other and still be successful. You need to have both sides of that equation. I've heard it put another way that team plus mission equals happiness. And I experienced this firsthand when for those of you who have heard my story in the past, I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. And at one point in my life, I was told to prepare to die within the next year. And as I look back at my life and review the things that I was happy about and proud of, it wasn't the typical things I thought it was going to be. It wasn't getting assigned F-15s. It wasn't throwing my hat in the air at the Air Force Academy when I graduated. It was those times that I was a part of a great team on an inspiring mission, whether that was my F-15 squadron and the brothers and sisters I had in that group and the mission that we were on, or the Air Force Academy rugby team and the great times and the mission that we were on with that group, or my own personal family. My favorite memories and the things that I was most proud of were those times when I was on a great team with a strong mission. And so here's my final thought for the group. This is something you can provide people. We're talking about happiness. We're talking about a sense of purpose. The most important things in people's lives, you can provide that as leaders and as team members if you focus on these two elements. Build the right team. Have the collaborative environment. Identify what a common purpose looks like. And then as you go execute that mission, streamline the mission, remove obstacles for the group, ensure you have the right roles undertaken within the team so that you can be successful as a group. Team plus mission equals happiness. Well, folks, we're going to go into Q&A at this point, so we'll leave this slide up as we talk about some of your questions. I know, Ansley, you've already gotten a couple of them sent to you at this point, so we'll go through those. Feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we'll get the questions from Ansley, our producer.
Great. So our first question, when you know your team is not high performing, who should you talk to, or how should you go about bringing that up but not lower morale even more?
Okay, so the question is, if you're on a team that's not high performing, who do you bring that up to? How do you avoid lowering morale even more? Well, here's what I tell you. You know, I wouldn't worry so much about lowering morale, because if you think you're not on an elite team, then everybody probably knows they're not on an elite team. So this is not going to be a surprise to people. This is not going to be, it's going to be an uncomfortable, awkward conversation, and maybe that's what your question's getting at. But it's certainly not going to lower morale, in my perspective, that we're bringing up the elephant in the room, that we're not operating to our highest efficiency. I've had to have that conversation with teams in the past myself, where I asked them point blank, do you think we're an elite team? And when the team answered no, I said, I agree with you. We're not an elite team. Let's take the steps to make sure that we can go to that status and be deliberate about what we're creating. So the question was, who do we talk to build that up? I would talk to the equivalent of the ace or the champion in your role and say, hey, I don't feel like we're operating as an elite team, and I want to support you. And we've heard that one of the ways to start gelling as a team and to start focusing on working together as a group is to have that common objective. And I would start with why, Simon Sinek style, and figure out what is the aligning objective in the long term that this group is pursuing. So have that conversation with the ace or champion. What else, Ansley?
Okay, this one, if there are 5 to 9 members, and you mentioned 3 members, the ace, the champion, then who are those other members' names? Okay,
so the question was, if there are 5 to 9 members, and we've already talked about the ace, the champion, and the scribe/alternate ace, who are the other roles, what are the other roles going to be within the team? And I would tell you, you have complete freedom to pick the rest of those roles. And I would think functionally at this point. So if you and I were working on a mission together, I'd say, what's your mission objective? And let's say that you were doing a sales mission like we just completed, and you wanted to get your sales above your forecast number, and we just helped the team to do this in Q4. And we needed to bring in not just the sales team members, but we needed to bring in the sales operations group, and the folks that handle the CRM behind the scenes for sales. And we needed to bring in the marketing team, because obviously they're a vital part of seeding the environment so you can have sales pipeline so that you can convert and get more sales. And then we needed to bring in the product team so that we could have a better dialogue about the real features that are connecting with the customer and putting the customer first in that conversation. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, we brought in the customer. The customer was part of the planning stage, and that created some great buy-in from them, but also, and of course, brought the great insights from that group as well as to how to better resonate with the final end user.
Great. Our next question: how do you play a role in creating energy and excitement on a team that you aren't managing?
How do you play a role in creating energy and excitement on a team that you aren't managing? We get this question all the time, and basically what it comes down to is, within my sphere of influence, I don't really feel like I can affect the larger group as well as I'd like to. And what I'd say is this: challenge the team to find the why, and if they're not finding it, then you articulate it and say, this is why I believe we exist and what I think we're building towards, and then ask, am I right? Is that what we're doing here, or is it something different? And challenge the group to articulate that. And that's a great way to at least get them on the path of having the right discussions. Because what it sounds like is happening is, going back to my analogy earlier, this is the all action without vision scenario where we're really busy, but it's not necessarily connected to an overarching strategic objective or goal, and that's what they call the nightmare, where we're just acting without any sense of purpose. So help to build back in that sense of purpose, and just tell them, I want to know what we're building towards in the future, and I'm excited about working with this team, but can we spend 10 minutes trying to identify what the great end goal is here, what's the destination that we're trying to create? And I promise you, if you ask that question, people will talk for more than 10 minutes. They'll love to talk about that, and it'll help to build alignment with the team.
What if you are hired by a company to create a high-performance team, but not all of the existing employees are buying in?
Not all of the existing employees are buying in. That's a common challenge. We're working with two groups right now where that's taking place. And here's what we tell those teams, because you don't always have the right team members on board. And you won't always be able to keep all the team members that you have currently. What got you here won't necessarily get you there, right? So we've got to figure out very quickly what's the team going to look like that will succeed. Here's the thing I recommend for those teams: build out in explicit detail what success looks like and what the team is going to look like that will succeed. In other words, talk about what your culture needs to be in order to succeed. We have a team right now that we're working with, and they've been seen mostly as a support asset and kind of behind the scenes and used to just taking orders instead of having a strategic seat at the table. And they need to make a transition now. Their role is changing, and it's becoming much more of a guiding role instead of just a support asset. They don't really have the human capital today to do that. So what they're doing is they're redefining their culture and talking about how important it is to guide, and it's shifting the culture in that direction in a very positive way. They're already seeing changes taking place. They're already seeing people step up because they're intentional and they're focusing on it. That being said, there's still a couple of outliers who aren't changing, and they'll probably never change. But guess what? This is an easier way for you to define your new culture, and then those folks see it clear as day. As the culture continues to move away from those few that are resistant to change, then it's clearer and clearer every day that they don't belong on that team, and they just kind of naturally remove themselves.
This one, they have invited their team members to join this webinar session. They said this is an awareness and development opportunity. What are your thoughts of team inclusiveness and the approach regarding learning?
So team inclusiveness and regarding learnings, I finished a couple books recently on the miracle molecule, something to look up after this session, but it's the oxytocin, and it's this hormone that we all produce when we work together, and it's called the trust molecule. And we knew all about it. We didn't know what it was called as fighter pilots, but we knew about the concepts, and we did it all the time. We worked and played together. We worked together. We did everything together as fighter pilots and trainer pilots. And it was because we built the camaraderie, and we learned as a group, and we struggled as a group, and we stayed close-knit as a team, and that allowed us to build that familial element in there. So I love that you're inviting your entire team to this. Afterwards, have a discussion about it, and don't only talk about the things that you really liked out of this discussion. Think about some of the things you want to challenge and get that debate going with the group and start to build out your collective understanding and your common mental model for how you will employ some of these techniques. So fantastic. This is what builds trust on a team. This is how you take your team to the next level. And we said it earlier, team plus mission equals success, and you're emphasizing the team right now.
I like the idea of having red team members who don't work for the company. What are the best experiences you've had with this? Yep,
so the question is, red team members that don't work for the company, what are the best experiences we've had doing this? So two ways. We've done it with outside functional experts, so somebody that's just a consultant or a sales expert or some group that needs to take a look at a mission, and then the other one is the customer. And of the two, I recommend customer even more because the customer always provides insights and at a minimum gets excited about what you're doing when they see that they're part of the mission. And so the tactical aspects of doing a red teaming session, I won't get into a lot of details here, but basically what it comes down to is think about your subject matter experts, those people that you want their inputs from, those insights, anywhere in the world. Do it through a web conference. We're doing this on WebEx right now. You can do this easily. We have a lot of documentation on how to conduct the red teaming session, but it should last less than 25 minutes from start to finish, and that includes you giving the briefing of your plan. So if you count about 10 minutes up front of you telling the red team about your plan, you really only get 15 minutes to get their input at the end. And go read the documentation on how to conduct these, but what it comes down to is that it's not a dialogue. You're just collecting as many inputs as possible, and every time you get an input, instead of debating them as the person who created the plan and saying, hey, that's a good idea, but here's why we did it this way, it's not a discussion. That would take way too long. I just want to collect as many inputs as possible, and then we'll incorporate the ones that make sense to into the plan after the red team leaves. But you're in, you're out, everybody goes back to their business after that.
Do you have any metrics or soft measures that help a team understand if they are a high-performing team?
Any metrics or soft measures that help a team understand if they're a high-performing team? So, great question. I'll give you an example of why I believe Afterburner is a high-performing team from last week. So we did a session. It was a huge group, med device group. I had a great time working with them. We got out to the event. We had 12 facilitators on site. There's about 600 client personnel on site that we're helping to work with. Well, we get there, and our lead, our CEO, Murph, has the flu, and it hit him instantly. And that morning, he went down hard with the flu. This is a huge pop-up threat, right? This is the equivalent to derail any other group because he had about 4 hours worth of speaking time that he was going to be doing on stage during that day. So we had to be able to execute our contingency plan very quickly. Here's why I believe we operated as an elite team, and here are some of the metrics I look at. First of all, mutual support. As soon as that happened, the entire team stepped up and said, all right, what can we do to support as we shift our roles around and make sure that we still get this mission across the goal line? So nobody sat back and said, oh, that's too bad. That's going to be a bad mission. It would have gone well. Wish we would have had a better plan. Instead, everyone stepped up and made sure it worked. So I stepped in as the new lead. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do some of the things I had hoped to that day because now I needed to prepare to lead a 4-hour presentation. And everybody else on my team stepped up and filled in the gaps where I wasn't able to. The other piece of it was we had a competency level because we had trained to it, we had executed to it, we had debriefed against it over and over. I knew I could trust my team members to be able to shift their roles around and still execute at that extremely precise level because we had prepared for years for this moment when we would need to shift and execute in a different capacity. And so we were able to execute at that elite team level. So as you're asking yourself, if you operate as an elite team, consider if the worst happened, if you got thrown the huge pop-up threat, how would the group react today? Do you have the competency to be able to step up and overcome that threat? Do you have the willingness and buy-in to be able to step up and overcome that threat? Or do you have a group that's a team of champions and is kind of just going to watch this take place and not step up as one unit and respond to the environment?
You mentioned that 9 to 7 people is the optimal team size for high performance. Can you create a high-performing team of teams?
Great question. Yes, you absolutely can. And here's the thing that they don't talk about because it's kind of the graduate level conversation. Of course, we can't just have companies that are 8 people large, right? So we have to have teams that are much bigger than the optimal size. That's just if we had our pick, we would have teams that were 5 to 9 people. But we also know that in order to scale, we're going to have to create larger and larger teams over time. The takeaway, though, is that you have an overarching, connecting objective for all of those different teams. So if you have, like when I flew F-15s, we would have, let's say, 40 planes out there. Each of the 5 groups of 8 would be connected under a common objective, and we would brief together as a group, and we knew what our collective goal was, and we each knew as a set of 8 aircraft what our role was within that overarching objective. So you absolutely have to operate as teams of teams, but you have to understand what the intended effects are for the larger group. Once again, graduate level conversation, it's a great one to have. We'll probably have to take the rest of that offline now.
What are some things individual team members can do to contribute to the team moving towards high performance if you're not the ace?
If you're not the ace, once again, what are some things you can do to contribute towards the high-performing team? I think this is a similar question to the one we had before, in that I would just strive to create that sense of why, that sense of purpose. And at the end of the day, what I'm really getting at is 2 things. I'll ask teams to articulate both sides of the spectrum. I want you to tell me what we're building, why it's so exciting that we work together as a group, why it's better for us to work together as a team and quit focusing on our quarterly goals as much and start looking at the long term and what we could build in 3 years if we really were serious about this. And that's great, and everybody gets excited about that, but then we'll also say, what if we just do business as normal? What does that look like? What happens if we just continue going on our individual paths, we never really step it up? What can we expect to take place? And a lot of times that's an uncomfortable conversation because people say, we're not going to see success. We already see the competition catching up to us. We see bad things happening within the marketplace. And that's just as powerful for the team. I create both a vision for success that gets everybody happy, but then also a sense of urgency around why what got us here won't get us there, and why we do have to make some changes no matter what. So you're always trying to balance that out. And as a team member, have that dialogue with your team to try to drive that. If you can't come up with a good answer for those things, you can't figure out what we're building, or, you know, if we go back to business as usual, maybe it's even easier. Maybe we shouldn't be a team. That's, once again, just as powerful, and that's the type of team that should not be together, and that's a great opportunity to take the focus off of something that's not strategically relevant for the entire group.
This is such a kind comment. Joel, I value and appreciate the content and presentation. I also want to thank you for your service to our country and your continued good health.
Wow, thank you very much. I love doing this. Hopefully it comes through. I've got a passion for this. I'm a teacher at heart. Everybody on our team, we say that they've got to be master instructors, but also lifetime learners. I learn from each one of these that I do. Every time I interact with folks out there, I learn, and it's a privilege and an honor to have this second chapter and an opportunity to work with great teams like the ones I'm talking to right now.
The next question, when do too many groups become counterproductive? So not just teams of teams, but also having those groups.
When do too many groups become counterproductive? I'm going to answer that in a little bit different way. I'm going to say that you should create only as many groups as the 3 or 4 things that you're focused on for the year. So let's back that up a little bit and unravel that. Before you determine how many groups you should have, at the highest level within the organization, you should figure out what your critical leverage points are. And this is the biggest challenge that we walk into, is we'll go work with the CEO and he'll say, these are the 20 things we're working on this year. And we'll have to slowly whittle that away. And that's not even exaggeration. Sometimes it's in the hundreds. We'll whittle that away and say, let's find out what the 3 most critical things are for your teams. Once we identify that, then you tell me, how many teams do you need to have to support each one of those 3 strategic objectives for 2017? And by doing it that way and answering it, looking at it from that perspective, you're going to find you're not going to build out too many teams to go execute. What ends up happening is we're trying to go for 20 strategic objectives, and that means to a scaling effect, we've got 100 teams out there working together, and it's chaos, and it's trying to boil the ocean, and we let good be the enemy of great, and we stop getting the focus on the right things.
Does the alternate ACE or group leader have responsibilities as far as the ACE duties go if the original leader is ever absent?
Absolutely, and that's what we brief the alternate ACE on, that if the ACE steps out or has to go on PTO for a week, the alternate ACE and the scribe has been working closely enough with the ACE that he or she can just step up and fill the role, and nobody even notices that it took place. And so that's for another webinar, what each of those duties is for the ACE. But suffice it to say, it's working behind the scenes, it's coordinating with each of the people on your team, and doing a lot of that coordination one-on-one, because remember, Everybody hates meetings. You want to minimize the amount of time that you get your team together. You want to make it extremely impactful. Start celebrating some successes. Show that you're able to navigate the inevitable pop-up threats. You get together for 15 minutes, right back to your day jobs. But in order to do that, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that the ace is doing, and the backup ace needs to be watching that in preparation for his or her turn to do it as well.
What are some books or resources you recommend on leadership?
Books or resources on leadership? I'll tell you the few that I just read recently. I love this question. I think you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And in the absence of being able to spend time with the people you admire the most, you're also the average of the 5 books you most previously read. And so the books I'll talk about are the ones that I'm either reading or just finished reading. One of them is Team Genius. A lot of the concepts that I talked about in this webinar came from Team Genius. It really reinforces the optimal team size, how to facilitate groups that are larger than 9 people, and create that execution with that team and be effective. Talks about oxytocin and that miracle molecule that we talked about before as well. The next one is Trust Factor, and that's a great book on why trust is so important for teams, and that's often the overlooked element for building the elite team. And if you look at some of the teams that we thought would be elite because they are comprised of elite individuals, it oftentimes comes down to the fact that they didn't necessarily trust one another. They never spent the time to build a sense of alignment, and so they had team members that are going in different directions, and it didn't move the organization or team collectively anywhere together. And then the last one I always advocate for is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I'm going to go on his podcast someday because I love that book and his premise so much. Why is such a critical question for any group, for any team, for your family, for you personally. You have to have an overarching sense of why you're doing things in order to ever carry it through, because it will get hard, it will get challenging. You will, if you're getting ready to do an Ironman triathlon, you will wake up one day, there's a marathon, you'll wake up one day at 4:30 a.m. and wonder why you're doing this, and if your answer isn't strong enough, you're going to roll over and turn off the alarm clock, and you're not going to get up. So you have to figure out that sense of why, that sense of purpose behind everything you do, and once you do that individually, private victories precede public ones, right? Then you can help your teams to do the same thing.
Okay, and this is a good wrap-up question because we're almost out of time. Do the ace and champion count as part of the team? Great question.
So the ace absolutely counts as part of the team. He or she is one of the most critical members of the team, and the champion doesn't. Typically, the champion is not on the team, and that's just because if you consider it, the ace is maybe a director and the champion's at a VP level, and so the champion is overseeing 5 to 7 missions, and he or she can't go to 5 or 7 mission X gaps each week. We always tell them go to as many as you can, but they can't be a team participant many times and still get their day job done and have the strategic perspective they need. So it's the equivalent of the general doing the captain's duties in our world. So I'd strive to keep the champion out of the day-to-day activity, but keep them brief and well-read and keep their situational awareness high on the individual missions. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, thanks for your time. As I always say, connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on my email. I do answer every single one of the questions we get. We love getting these questions. They sharpen our swords and help us to be more effective in these discussions down the road. And all right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the questions. Had great discussions today. Go out there. Hopefully you can flawlessly execute and help to continue to create some elite teams. We'll see you later.